We know, right, how to create validation, properties files. We know how to create bean classes, and we know how to write controller classes. The main thing here, you need to concentrate how to create XML file and how to configure that XML file under strutsconfig.xml file. Means validators, these plugins how to set here, and how to configure JavaScript validations if you require for input page. Okay, just concentrate on these fields. Input pages, generally we know how to create by using struts tags. If you require an input form with ID, I have a registration page with ID, with the name, and with email, with the mobile number, and some address. Finally, registered. So we know how to create it by using struts tags. So then after, for this form we have to create a bean class. We know how to write that bean class also here. Create package beans and write one class public class registration form bean, extend it from validator form. Extend it from validator form. Just write bean properties here. Private int ID, private string, name, email, address, and for mobile number, private long, required data type long and mobile. Write setter and getter here. Just like your action form, create a bean here without validations. Without any validations here, create a bean. Then for this bean, if you want to apply validations need to write under XML file. Validations we need to write under XML file. The XML file name, it can be anything. Write one XML file. Validation.xml file. Actual validation rules.xml file we no need to create. It is already a predefined XML file. It's a predefined XML file, validation rules XML file. Validation rules XML file is a predefined XML file. Validator hyphen rules. Actually in this rules XML file, what they given? Predefined validators. 23 predefined validators and 14 error messages and one plugin configuration. Predefined validators and 14 error messages and one plugin configurations here they given. And coming to this validation XML file, here we have to write actual validations for our input form. Here we have number of fields: ID, name, email, mobile and address. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. For these 5 fields, if you want to apply validations here, the main root tag of this validation XML file is form-validation.xml file. Form-validation.xml file. In between form-validation.xml file, we have one more tag, form set. Here in this form set, actually this validator form approach, the features of this validator form, which features they will provide here? Form backup, JavaScript validations, Java validations, and one more support, localization. Localization means here, in case if this form submitted user, if he is Indian user, for Indian user for mobile number, it need to check Indian user mobile number. If the user is US user, it need to check US user mobile number validations. That is what actually localization here. So based on country or based on language, for this input form, there you need to apply that country required validations, country specific validations. Okay, ID, name, email, address. These 4 fields validations are common for all the countries. But coming to mobile number, for US one type of validation, for UK one type of validation, and for India we have to apply one type of validation. Okay, so first configure here common validations. In between form set and form set, write all the required common validations. We have an ID. For that ID, if you want to apply validation here, under form set, form name. First, what is your form? The form reference name we have to pass here. For this bean, if the reference name, if it is RF, we know, right, where we have to create this reference? Under struts XML file. Under struts XML file, in between form beans, we have to create reference, right? Use this reference name here. Use a reference name RF, means for registration form I am going to applying validations here. Form RF. For this form RF, write validations here. How many fields we have? 4 fields we have. 4 common fields. Field name. We have first field name is what? ID. First field name is ID. For that ID, which validation we required here? For this ID, I want to apply validations. ID range should between 111 to 999. It should not less than 111. It should not greater than 999. A range validation I want to apply here. In this 23 predefined validators, we have one int range validation. In the same way, float range, double range, okay, long range, byte range. This type of validators we have, range validators. By using this range validators, you can apply this type of ranges, like integer ranges or float ranges. If you want to apply any float ranges, you can apply that ranges by using this range validators. So for this ID now, I should go through int range validator. Why? Because my ID field is integer data type. So you should go through int range validator. So that validator name you have to apply here by using depends. Depends into range validator. So what it will check? It need to check range between 111 to 999. So 111 to 999, it's my required input. In case for any other validator, if you want to change that input, dynamically it need to provide that support, right? Internally, this int range validator, it will expect some input parameters from us. We have to pass input parameters from here by using variable tag. We have one variable tag here. By using this variable tag, variable name and variable value, we have to pass variable inputs from here. Variable input, minimum value, minimum range is what, and maximum range is what? Variable value. Minimum I require 111, and maximum variable name max. It will expect two variables from here. Minimum it will expect, and it will expect a max here. Variable name max and variable value 999. So 2 input variables we have to pass, and okay, variables I will pass, fine. Then finally, if it is not valid, it need to send error message, right? Which error message it need to forward? Message. The message name, how it should be? It need to print one error message here. So the message name, which range? ID range should between 999. So ID is one dynamic parameter, 111 is one dynamic parameter, 999 is one dynamic parameter. Already they given error messages, generic error messages they given. In that error messages, what I need to print? ID should range between 111, 999. So 3 input arguments also I need to pass. Here in this 14 error messages, we have an error message for range validator. So that range validator error message, it will expect 3 input parameters from us. So here what you should do, that 3 input arguments also you need to pass. Arguments, input values you need to pass through argument. Argument key equal to, first one is ID, actual error message it will send. For this all range validators it will send this type of error message. 0 argument is required between 1 argument through 2 argument. So here this argument and this argument we need to pass. Okay, so first argument 0 argument ID. Here it is key, right? Key means what it is expecting? It is expecting a value from properties file. For this ID, again it will expect a ID from properties file. Already 14 error messages are there, then that ID also it will expect from properties file. You have to create a properties file like messages.properties file. There you should provide ID here. ID equal to ID. Or else if you don't want to read that one from properties file, you need to configure here resource equal to false. If you configure resource equal to false, then it will not expect any ID from here. This ID itself as a dynamic argument it will pass. If you want to read ID from properties file, then you can put resource equal to true here. By default it is true. When we should apply resource true? When we should go through resource false. In case if you require internationalization support, let's say if you have multiple languages properties files here. For Hindi if you want to send, Hindi ID if you want to send. In that case you better to read data from properties files. If you are providing only English language support, then you can configure resource equal to false here. If you are going to internationalization, configure resource equal to true. True in case of I18N. In case of no I18N, in case if you don't want I18N, configure it false. In case of I18N, you better to read from properties file. In case of no I18N, you just configure this value from here itself. This ID itself it will print in this error message. That ID itself it will replace here. And the next two arguments minimum and maximum. So here we have minimum, maximum. So that minimum and maximum also if you want to read dynamically, you just pass argument key equal to dollar expression of variable colon min. Resource equal to false. One more argument, key equal to variable colon max. Dynamically these values resource equal to false finally. Dynamically these values it will append here for variable min, for variable max. So that arguments finally it will place on your message. ID should range between like 1112 to 999 error message, it will print to the user finally. So what we should know, how many variables, already predefined validators we have, right? That predefined validators, how many variables they required, how many inputs they required, and how many input arguments they required. In case while using that validators, what you should know, how many validator inputs, how many variable inputs we have to pass, how many argument message inputs we have to pass, we have to know. So always range validators will expect 3 input arguments, 2 variable inputs. And for this name we need to check whether this name field is empty or not. Empty or not only we need to check. So to check empty or not here, for that name, to check empty or not, field name, for field name you can use depends required. We have one validator in this properties files, we have one validator required validator. This required validator will expect only one single argument key name. If you configure resource equal to false, it will try to send this name itself for this required error message. For required which error message it will use? How many arguments? Here it is expecting only one argument. 0 argument is required, is the error message for required. So that name it will append here, name is required error message it will send to your name field. And coming to this email field, I want to check whether this email is empty or not and it is there in email format or not. Email format checking we need to do and empty or not also we need to check. So for email, okay, this one is for what? Name. For email, field property email. For email depends, we have to apply multiple, right? One is required and one is email validator. So one is required comma, we have an email validator also here. email comma required comma email, both you can apply. And that email error message is what required we have, and email also we have. For email error message is 0 argument is not email format. 0 argument is it not in email format. So only one argument is required for required, only one argument is required for email also. So finally only one single argument is enough here. Email resource equal to false. In case if we send empty email, it will send error message, email is required. If we send an email with invalid, if we send an email with invalid format, then it will send email format is wrong. It will send email is not in email format. This error message it will forward. And we have one more field, address. For address we can apply same, right? Same required. For address you can apply here required. Address is required, error message it will send. Okay, up to here is fine. These are common fields, right? So these are common fields. So that common fields I am writing under form name RF. Finally we have to close form. Here we have to apply multiple validations. How many validations we have to apply? 4 fields validations. ID, name, email, address. And we have one mobile field. For mobile field we have to apply multiple countries validations here. This one is for default, means for all languages. For all languages it will execute it. Only for Indian language if you want to execute mobile number, form set language equal to English and country equal to India. If you write language en and country in, only for India it will execute that form set validations. Only for India it will execute form set validations. And my form name is RF. And for this form, how many fields we need to check for Indian? Only one single field. Field name, mobile. Mobile number field depends, by using depends attribute for checking mobile number, we require to check regular expressions. If he is an Indian user, you need to check validations like this. Indian user mobile number should between 7 to 9 and the remaining all should be digits, and the digit count 9 are mandatory. Remaining 9 should be digits and those are mandatory. First 2 digit it can be 7 or 8 or 9. If he is a US user, you can apply this. US user numbers can start with 2 or 3 or 4. The remaining 9 should be digits. So here you can apply that expressions. To apply expressions, here we have one validator, mask. You have to go through this mask validator. Mask validator, it will expect one input and one argument from us. Inputs how to pass? By using arguments, we have to pass by using argument key, mobile, resource equal to false, and variable. Input variable we have to pass by using variable and variable. Variable name, mask. Variable name, mask, and variable value. Variable value, this expression we have to pass. 7 to 9 $9 finally. Variable value. In case if you want to apply validations for US user, here you need to write one more form set, their English and the country US. For US user, change this validator here 2 to 4. That's it. One variable and one argument it will expect here. One variable and one argument. Finally, who will read this validation XML file data? A plugin class will read. A plugin class should read this validation XML file data. So how to provide these mappings configurations? Through struts config.xml file, you should configure, and the plugin class name is validator plugin. So first, from where we need to start in strutsconfig.xml file? In between struts config and struts config. First we need to start by using action mappings. So first action mappings. So first action, your form action, if it is registration dot do. Here you should configure action name equal to registration, and for this registration form, registration path, action path equal to registration, and the form reference name rf. Which form reference name it is? Your validator form reference name. This validator form reference name where we should create under form beans. In between form beans and form bean reference name rf, and the class name registration form bean. Then validations do you require? Yes. Then validate equal to true. In case of validations, it will send error messages. So from where we need to populate it under index.jsp page. Like this we should configure. But from where it need to execute that validations? From XML file. So who will read that validations from XML file? We have a plugin class. We have to configure that plugin class name here. Plugin class name is validator plugin class. And here we have to configure our validation XML files. Validation.xml file, validator-rules.xml file. Here these two XML files we have to pass as a input parameters to validator plugin. Just one thing you have to remember, how to configure plugin and how to use this XML file.